Hello, and welcome to Returning to Us, a podcast that gives you strategies and tips for how to hack your brain, build and strengthen relationships, and to teach people how to recognize and neutralize their emotional states. I'll discuss emotional intelligence and regulation, how food and exercise impact the body and brain, and share lessons from my own lived experiences. I'm Lauren Spiegelmeier, the founder of the Behavior Hub, which is an organization that works to reduce the stressors of raising and educating children through a brain and biology-based lens. In these episodes, I'll share stories and strategies from my own life, work, and research, answer listener questions, and wrap it up with a try-it-at-home tip. Decades worth of information in just minutes. You ready? Welcome, everyone. Today, I am interviewing Rebecca Britt. She is founder of Stable Moments, which was founded in October of 2014. And she's a social worker with a horse trainer and a horse trainer with a certification in Equine Specialist, mental health and learning. So very connected to the work that we do and that I do. And she received her bachelor's degree from social work in Vermont in 2010, and then became employed as a post-adoption case manager. Also very connected to my background. And during her work with adopted children, she realized that there were these correlations between how this therapeutically or how to therapeutically intervene with children that are living with and surviving from and healing from trauma, and how to train horses using natural horsemanship. So through the growth of the Stable Moments program, she has developed her own model and is now offering a practical curriculum to anyone wishing to serve foster kids, adopted kids, kids dealing with stress, kids dealing with trauma, really probably all kids, and serving children nationwide by offering training, curriculum, resources to different equine facilities across the country. And she often speaks about mental health to mental health professionals across the nation about this approach and this model, which we're going to learn all about today, and holds a master's degree in program evaluation, as well as a professional cert in research or results-based accountability. So this allows her to provide all the Stable Moments locations the best tools for collecting data, demonstrating their impact of their program. So I think this is so closely aligned to the work that we do. And I love that it is a very non-traditional approach. A lot of the work that we do is not taking your traditional mental health approach. So I'm super excited to dig into this and talk about all of these things. So let's get right in. So why don't we start with maybe where your passion comes from, where, this pathway that kind of led you to where you are now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me, Lauren. I'm excited to share this model with your audience. Yeah, so my passion got started. I started wanting to be with horses. My parents said that I would pass this horse facility when I was 3 years old and say, can I have lessons? And they never got me lessons. So at 9 years old, I just got off the bus. Instead of getting off at home, I just got off the bus at the horse farm. And once they tracked me down, they realized, all right, I guess we got to get her lessons. So I really was, I want a pony, but I really was interested in the horse thing from a very young age. And I didn't really want lessons as much. I took the lessons to ride and stuff, but I really wanted to learn how to train horses. I wanted to know how you took a horse from the wild, or you took a horse from a baby, to teaching it how to do all these things. And there weren't really instructors out there for that. So I had to kind of go online. And back then it was like ordering CDs and stuff to figure out how to do that. It seems like crazy that that's a reality, but I wanted to learn. So I learned using thoroughbreds off the racetrack, which can be a difficult horse to work with. They've been trained they're high strung. They've been trained to do one thing. Yep. And so lots of like real trial and error. And that's where I was introduced to natural horsemanship, whereas rather than like breaking the horse or the cowboy method of like beating the horse down into submission, you actually study their herd behavior. And you see how they communicate with each other And this is a lot through energy, actually through pressure and release that they use in the pasture. And you mimic that and to get your desired results, or really to connect with the horse so that they want to work with you in partnership and do the things that you want them to do. Sounds manipulative when I say that, but you really are trying to partner with the horse. So fast forward, I stayed very interested in that. I was on the equestrian team at college. I wanted to be a social worker, but I thought I wanted to be much more of like a probation officer, or I had no clue that I wanted to go into foster adoption, but that was the only job hiring in a recession. So I jumped in, and I had actually had, I have two cousins that are younger than me that were adopted out of state's custody in significant trauma. One of the girls was actually in a foster home, and she was 3 years old, and she peed her pants and she was put in boiling water, and she had significant burns through half of her body. And that happened in the foster home. So my aunt foster to adopted her out of the hospital. She was at the hospital, and that's where she got. So, and they had a whole plethora of relational issues growing up, my two cousins. And so I did have firsthand knowledge, even though I didn't know, like all those things I saw, which they were, calling reactive attachment disorder back then. I had some experience. So when I shared that in the interview, they said, actually, you know more than maybe somebody else just coming out of college, so we'll hire you. But I had amazing mentorship and supervision in that job. And as I started to learn about trauma and therapeutic interventions for kids that have been adopted out of state's custody, I was like, oh my gosh, they're the exact principles that you use with natural horsemanship, like relationship based. The relationship is the goal, being non-punitive, taking the fight or flight as a face value. If they say they can't do something, they truly can't do something. Not engaging in power struggles. I mean, there was just like so many things that I was like, it's identical.
Yep.
So the passion was ignited from like Googling. Certainly somebody else has made this correlation before and have gotten these two populations together and have understood that this is the path. And it really didn't exist. So that's where the passion lies. I just, I can go into how I kind of got it started, but that's where the passion started, was like, holy smokes, I got to do this.
Yeah. That gave me chills when you were talking, because our approach is very like biologically based. I'm often teaching people about the brain, biology, our like primordial way, like why was stress created in the first place, or what did stress look like in the first place, and how did it save us, and how has it changed now, and how does it impact us? And really, one of the therapeutic grounding strategies that we talk about for kids is shaking. And I was like, yeah, and I tell the story of like a zebra being chased by a lion, and they're like, oh, the zebra's scared, that's why it's shaking. No, the zebra is shaking because that is its natural and biological way of getting its body back to neutral. So in many ways we can replicate those things. So I love that. And even this podcast is called Returning to Us. The meaning behind that, the reasoning behind that is we are in such a state of stress and chaos and overwhelm, and not just in the last 18 months with the pandemic. This has been an ongoing problem for a couple decades. And my thought here was like, talk about things that we can do to return to us, return to the way we were eons ago, when we lived a much healthier way and we did much healthier things. And there has been so much advancement that has saved many people's lives. And there are so many beautiful things about all of the stuff that has come in the last many decades. But we also need to be mindful of, where we came from, what worked, how our systems were built. And I think cueing the past, and even some Eastern medicinal ways of oral healing, and just other things that have been in the world and working for many, many, many years. But yeah, I think that it's a beautiful correlation that you found. And I know animals in general can be really healing for kids. And I've spent a little bit of time having lived in Maryland and in Baltimore. Outside of Baltimore, there are quite a few farms, and many with horses, and I visited quite a few, and quite a few of them I think do therapeutic approaches. So I've seen it in action. I've seen it work. I've seen kids respond to animals, and horses in particular, in ways I've never seen them even respond to other humans. So it's incredible. But I'm dying to know. So we know now about where the passion comes from, where you got the idea and the connection from. How did you go from, okay, I have this idea, I see this correlation, to now I'm going to figure out a way to turn this into an organization that can help people?
Yeah. So I moved to Georgia just to be closer to my dad. So I left my social work job, went down to Atlanta, and I knew I wanted to do something with this, but I had no clue how you would pave that. Horses are expensive, like property is expensive. I knew nothing about nonprofit development at the time. So I didn't even know that I wanted to be a nonprofit. I just wanted to explore this idea. So I walked onto a rescue, like a horse rescue that often had volunteers coming and going. They were very free form as far as letting people grab the horses. And so I knew that this was a welcoming environment. And I asked them, like, would you mind, I'm a social worker and a horse person, would you mind if I invited some foster adopted kids from the community to come and just be with horses, just be with them? We weren't going to do any riding. We were going to do groundwork, because a lot of natural horsemanship is actually, it's, most of the principles start on the ground. Making that relationship. A lot of times, everybody sees this horse program and they go, cool, my kid wants to ride. Like, we jump right to riding, and which is really jumping right to, which, trust me, I ride, and I'm not bashing anybody that rides, but we miss this whole portion of connection, because we're just going to get on the horse's back. We're going to use them up. We're going to go fast. We're going to throw them away, put them back in their pasture, and that's that. We miss this whole, like, let's work together as a team. So really the value that horses bring for this population, and it is groundwork. And then there's all the liability stuff, like riding brings this whole level of complexity of staffing and stuff that you would need. So I said, just brushing horses, just being around horses, I'd like to see if we could do this. So I put out a call to people in the community through Facebook, whatever. I ended up getting up to 12 different kids. And this was 12 different hours that I was brushing and going through obstacle courses and teaching them about horses. And it was really meaningful to me, but I was like, I had a full-time job down there. The farm was like 45 minutes away. It was really hard to manage my time with that many kids, and nobody was paying anything. And so this is where the mentorship piece of the program got started. So I was like, you know what? Everybody in this space, I feel like, feels like, in the child trauma, whatever space, like, to me, feels like you need this like certain credential. You need to be a therapist. You need to have like certain amount of letters behind your name before you touch that kid. And at first I had some like imposter syndrome or some inadequacy, like feelings around, I'm not good enough, or like maybe the community isn't good enough. And then I was like, no, that's the beauty of this, is like, we need to find a middle level where not everyday people are doing therapy, but what can they do? Like, they can do what I'm doing, which is like keeping a safe environment for them to brush a horse, for them to lead a horse around, for them to be with a kid, to use, be playful and empathetic and accepting and curious, and anybody can do that. So that's where I put out a call to mentors, and I said, I used a lot of the volunteers that were already there, and I said, like, would you hang out with this kid if I taught you a little bit about what I think the vision for the program is? So I got a certain amount of people signed up. I put a little slide deck together of what is trauma, how does it impact the brain, why do we need to approach these kids in the way that we do, how we're not fixers, we're simply there to facilitate a relationship. And I brought them through a mentor training, and off they went. And I'd love to say that it was just this beautiful thing from the get-go. It was beautiful. It was also like, holy smokes, there's a lot of things I didn't think about. There's a lot of mistakes being made. I'm leaving mentors in situations that they don't feel comfortable being in. They're wondering what they're supposed to be doing. So what was nice about that is the program had to develop into a very structured model so that everybody knew what they were doing. And now we have, color-coded activities that go with a plan of care for each kid that are color-coded, that focus on specific life goals, so that when you're grabbing this yellow activity, it's going to be working on something the kid's needing to work on. We do activity logs, and we collect data, and we do progress summaries. So there's all this stuff that has come out of all the mistakes that we made.
Yep. That makes sense. For those of you who aren't in your own world of starting a business. It's not for the faint-hearted, and you learn very quickly what not to do. The beauty of that is you then very quickly repair and fix that. But I think that's part of it. Someone has told me a couple years ago that like profoundly impacted the way that I speak and the way that I share and the way that I teach is like, Lauren, you were once one of us. You didn't know a whole lot about all of this stuff. And then you researched it and studied it for years. And now you speak on it, but sometimes you forget what it was like to be you 10 years ago. So talk to us, teach us, preach to us like it's you of 10 years ago. And that helps so much because you get into flow and motion. You're so excited and passionate about what you're talking about, what you're doing, what you're creating, and you forget what it's like on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is amazing. So many like moments where I'm like getting chills. I can see all of it unfolding, and I can see, it's a big part of my work with University of Pennsylvania is teachers like, I don't have a degree in social work. I don't, it needs to go as a counselor. No, all they need is you to be present. All they need is for you to understand and be compassionate, or at least try to understand, be compassionate, have grace, instead of just dismiss them to someone else. That you're just deepening the psychological scars by just not being present. So you don't need a degree. You just need to know how to build a relationship. And that's the baseline of it all. So that's beautiful. So I guess then, in your experience with doing this for the last many years, what are you seeing kids struggle with, and how are you seeing this work shift and shape and change them?
Yeah, good question. So through my years of being a social worker and a case manager, I saw, I interviewed a lot of parents. I spent a lot of time with home visits, understanding what their pain points were. I got parents when they were ready to give their kid back. I'm done being an adoptive parent. Where do I return? And my goal was permanency. And I wish that, I had been connected with them right when they signed the dotted line for adoption. But either they weren't referred right away, or when they got the adoption paperwork, they were like, I want to do this on my own. I'm ready to be done with Department of Children and Families for a while, and I wasn't Department of Children and Families. I was we were a private nonprofit, but they were really done. They were feeling significant burnout and questioning their decisions. So I would go in and field a lot of the complaints and the challenges. And then I would work with them. And what I really found, honestly, like at first, I'll just share this just because it makes me human. But in the first year, I was like, I learned all this trauma stuff, and I was like, this is how we approach these kids, and this is what I'm going to teach the parents. And I was like, very much like so much empathy for the kids. And then I was like making the parents the bad guy. Like, how do they not have this empathy? And like, they signed up for this. And I was like, I gave them all the tools and they're not using them. Or I was just frustrated that the parents didn't get it. And I would go back to my supervisor and I would complain. I'd be like, they don't have the capacity to do this work. And my supervisor at the time really helped me see that the parents, Rebecca, treat the parents as if you're treating the kids. Like, use some, get accepting, use some curiosity, be empathetic. Like, this is flipping hard, and this isn't what they imagined. They're grieving, figure out why they chose to adopt. Like, they're grieving their ideal family or what they thought their life would look like or whatever. So when I started treating the parents like the kids, and not in a condescending way, but just, approaching everybody the same way, it was a lot more effective. And now I'm really, really, really proponent of being supportive of our parents. But what I found was that all the kids had the same challenges. Now, not every kid had all the same challenges, but it was like the same types of challenges I saw, like let's say 12 challenges: low self-esteem, needing control, low self-worth, lazy, people pleaser. There was like these challenges that lying, whatever. And so I took all of those challenges and divided them into 6 life skill categories. So like self-worth, independence, responsibility, healthy relationships, emotional awareness. And then I color coded those. And so I kind of put the challenges in one column, and lumped them into these 6 color coded categories of life skills that they would be working on. And so that allows program directors to be able to hear these challenges and say, okay, I'm hearing that your kid has this all is lost mentality. Like they try to do something and they're like, oh, I suck. I'm just never going to get this right. That's something that ends up in the self-worth. We need to build up their self-worth. Mm-hmm. So they're probably going to have green as one of their target life skill areas. Mm-hmm. And then we have activities that go with building self-worth. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of them overlap, right? Self-worth is going to also help with emotional awareness, and, or emotional awareness will help with regulation. But we have these categories, and we have these we have the challenges that are associated with life skill categories. So that's how I kind of came up with the challenges. And then, there's activities built for each one of those life skills to help them develop.
Okay, that's amazing. And I resonate with that so much, because I teach a very similar thing of like, these are the effects of stress and trauma and abuse. And I need you to know this list, because when you see these things showing up, it's not a choice. It's a reaction. It's a coping mechanism. And that's where we need to have the grace and the understanding and the compassion. So I love that you integrated that, because I know it's so needed. And for anyone who's listening who does not have a child who's in the foster care system, who's been exposed to trauma, we are all exposed to stress. And I would say in today's world, even if we think we have it all together, because of the way our society runs, because of both parents working or single mothers or the overuse of devices, there's a lot of relational neglect going on, and not intentionally, just because our needs are all over the place and we're overstimulated and there's so much to do and being pulled in 1,000 directions. So probably all of these different categories you're talking about in this type of approach is going to benefit every child. Every kid is right now dealing with self-worth of not getting, enough time from parents or whoever it may be, or, building that attachment bond because too much time is spent on devices and all these things. So these are not, I would say, at least for who I teach, these are not things that are just for kids with trauma. These are things that would benefit any child to experience or learn. But definitely for those who have experienced stress, trauma, any of those things, definitely would benefit from this, and mm-hmm. should have exposure, should have access to this.
Yeah.
So I guess that takes me to, so from that program, from that structure, you then took it and connected it to equestrian work, horses. Why horses? Why not dogs? Why not fish? I don't know, like, why horses?
I only like horses. No, I'm just kidding. So I know people all the time are like, oh, I love animal therapy and we do dogs, or like we have goats, we have chickens. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, that's awesome. But it's different. So why horses is because horses are prey animals. And so like dogs are predators, and horses are prey animals. They eat grass and they stand around waiting for something to kill them, which sadly, I mean, can we think about some of the kids that we work with and kind of standing around waiting for the ball to drop, right? Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that the correlations are there, because the horses are hyper vigilant. They have to sleep standing up. They have to always be assessing their environment for threat. They are so in tune to energy. I mean, if a fly lands on their back, they wiggle their skin right at that area so that the fly moves away. If you come into the stable and you just huff and puff, I mean, the horse is already like right there mirroring, like, okay, something to huff and puff about. If you're relaxed and calm, they can channel that energy. So not only are they so much like the kids that we serve, with like the hypervigilant and being highly attuned to changes in their environment, they also have this incredible capacity to mirror our affect. So it's really, really neat when you're teaching something like, okay, so there's an activity we do called join up. And it's going to sound intimidating, but every mentor that goes through our program, remember, you need no child experience, and you don't even need any horse experience. So everybody does this, even though it sounds intimidating. So you're standing in the middle of a ring, like a circular round pen,
Yep.
and the horse is moving around you at liberty, meaning there's nothing attached to the horse. They're just walking around you, and you're moving the horse through certain aids, like picking up your hand and pointing them one way. And you move the horse around you. And the way you get that horse to move is if you get big and you puff your chest out, that horse starts walking faster. And if you get really big, and we use a flag to drive the horse kind of, but if you get really big, the horse goes faster. And then if the horse continues, like it's trotting around or it's galloping around and not slowing down, we usually look at the kid's energy, or we look at our energy, and we're like kind of like tense and holding all this stuff that the horse is feeling. So they're like, you're still driving me with that energy. But if we like collapse our belly button and we take a deep breath, and sometimes we even have to think about what we ate for breakfast, because even when we collapse and we do all those things, we're still thinking, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. There's so much pressure, even just in our thoughts. We really have to disconnect to be able to have the horse come down to a walk or come down to a halt. And so when the kid can see that their energy, as they get big and as they get small, the horse moves faster or slower. It's just such a tangible expression of their regulation, of how they're holding on to their energy. So that's one of the coolest like gifts that horses can give us, is mirroring our energy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And we talk a lot about like emotional regulate. Parents want this fixed, or schools want them, like regulation is the first step. You have to teach them about emotions, recognizing their emotional state, because they cannot change their emotional state until they recognize that it needs to be changed. So I love this because it's such a good, like you said, like tangible, like visual reflection of their energetic state. You can't really not see how your energy is impacting the horse. It's naturally happening. You see it, and because of that, you become more aware of it. I think sometimes it's hard to teach that concept, especially to young kids, or kids that are just, they're all over the place, to really slow down and think about what is my internal state, what is my emotional state. Like it's hard to teach that without having something tangible or without seeing it. So this is an amazing connection. I love that. So what, and I know on your website, it has, I believe, the connected sites where people can go if they want to experience this. But what if, like, for example, I was like, I'm surprised there aren't any in Maryland. I know like they have to adopt it and all of that. But what if someone wants to bring this to their farm or their area? What do they do? And two, I guess that's like, so from the farm standpoint, what would that look like? And then from like a family who wants to experience it, that wants to try and bring it, what does the work, or what are the steps for bringing this to a new location?
Yeah. So the how we offer the model is we license it to different locations, and the equine facility has to go through our online certification course. So it's something that they can find online, and then that allows them to enter into a license agreement to become a facility. And then they get member benefits where they get all of our assets and how to run it, and they get access to me and member calls and all this stuff to make sure that they're helpful. They also get online mentor training. So all their mentors are getting the same training online before they get started. And, whether it's an equine facility that's like, oh, I want to do this, or it's a family that's like, we already go to a therapeutic riding farm, but it would be really cool if they actually served foster adopted kids in this way. Or we know of a place down the street that does therapeutic riding, because there's a whole bunch of therapeutic facilities that just don't do this program.
Yeah.
So, you know, send them the curriculum and say like, hey, did you know that you could serve foster adopted kids in your community? And there's this great model, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We also have like, I have the book, which is like a manual on the model. And to be honest, and I've always envisioned this for Stable Moments, the magic of our program is mentorship. So it's one-on-one mentorship. We match up one community mentor with one horse, 1 hour a week. But half of our activities that we have are equine and half of them are non-equine, because there's plenty of kids that come and they don't care to be with a horse right now. Yeah. Or they're not ready to be with a horse right now. So all of our non-equine activities are, you know, playing baseball in a way that is therapeutic, or giving compliments to themselves when they hit each base, or writing thank you cards and being really relational about what cards we write. And so we have a lot of non-equine stuff going on. So I think that this model could be really helpful for even a non-equine based mentorship program. Okay. And the book's like $30, and it tells you exactly like A to Z how to implement a mentorship program. So I think that could be helpful, even if they're like, you know what, we're never going to get into the horse space, but I wonder if these things could help at our local church's mentorship program or whatever. And then we also have just a community book of our approach. So the real book, like that I just talked about, that was $30. That's like if you wanted to implement a mentorship program. But if you're just like a community member that's like, I would like to be a good mentor, and I'd like to know how to be a good mentor, the community book is a much smaller version of just the main principles of how to show up during mentor sessions. And you can be a mentor anywhere, you know, you can mentor people in communities that you're already in. So.
Okay, so there are your access points, which I love. And I think the mentorship also is really important, especially for those kids, because what we know based on research is, you know, kids can be in a challenging environment, and there may be no way to remove them from that. It is unfortunately their circumstances. But if they have one champion, just one person who can be a buffer to that stress and overwhelm, trauma, abuse, whatever it is, they can still have like a positive upward trajectory. So the mentorship is hugely impactful. That one, I tell teachers this all the time, one person, kids need one person. You can be that one person and they will never forget that. And you may send them off to the next year, to the next teacher, and feel like you don't have any impact. But years down the road, there's, even if they don't come back to you, know that you had a massive impact. Yeah, that's such an important component. So I love that is also an option too for people in programs who don't have horses. So that's amazing. Yeah. So I always ask this question because I'm like, you teach this work, I teach this. I'm like, okay, well, people are always curious, like how do you integrate some of these practices or any of these practices in your own life? So what from the work that you do you also integrate into maybe like your self-care, your own stress management, or your own life?
So I truly believe leadership is about leading by example. And so I am the one that is the coach to the program directors, and they need to be the coach to the mentors, and the mentors need to be the coach to the kids, right? So it's this big trickle down effect. I wear this shirt that says I'm a big deal, because I feel like we're like really good at cheering on kids, and we're really good at pouring into and being empathetic with and being like, you're awesome, dude. Oh my gosh, look at the progress you made from this week to this week. And like, you're killing it, and developing these winning streaks for them. And so easy for us. But like, we don't do that for ourselves. So we think that this kid's a big deal. We would say, hands down, Brendan is a big deal. He's a rock star. We love him coming to this program. But I find people get very uncomfortable when I ask them to wear a shirt that says I'm a big deal.
Yeah, they do.
And, this isn't an ego thing. That's what we're afraid of, right? That it's like, oh, it's not about me. Well, it's better start being about you, because you are going to serve a lot of kids, and you better believe that you can do that, and you can do that well. And you're an example to these kids that are seeing somebody being successful, starting their own nonprofit, or somebody successful mentoring in their, so to downplay yourself downplays the possibilities for that kid. So I feel like to downplay myself downplays the possibilities for the program directors and the whole trickle down effect. But I will say that it's not that easy. So I don't just get to walk around saying I'm a big deal and everybody else should just believe it. Because so I do healing or transformation work, and I work with somebody that's in that space. She calls herself a transformation guide. And I'm constantly coming up against self-worth issues. Why am I frustrated in this situation? What am I doing here? All these things that come up. And all of them are related to my childhood and some defense mechanism or whatever that I took online, survival at some point. And there's all this healing I need to do. And the sad part is it never ends. You're always doing it. But I think that it's okay to acknowledge that, if we're going to ask, or I think that it's imperative that if we're going to also ask kids to work on like self-worth, like, I don't know if I know somebody that truly loves themselves like through and through. Like I love myself is like it's hard for people to say.
It is.
It's a big one. And it's really sad that a lot of people don't love themselves. But, and I don't think that it goes, it's not necessarily just schedule in, pedicures and time to walk on the beach or whatever. That can be nice and self-care, but I think it just goes deeper in exploring like your patterns, why you do what you do. Part of my strengths is that I'm productive and that I, do a lot of things for a lot of people, but it's also part of my like reward system for how I feel good about myself. So who am I without all that, is what I need to look at. And there's no good or bad or whatever, but I feel like you do owe it to the world. Like, I feel like the one best thing we can all do is heal ourselves, and then we'll show up for others so much more. So I'm in it. I'm always in it. And it's, I think it's just a critical piece if you're going to choose to be there for others.
Yeah, I agree. When I'm teaching our stress management and self-care content, I'm always telling people to get a therapist. And it doesn't matter if you don't have any history of stress or trauma. You don't need to call a therapist. It doesn't need to be a traditional therapist. Get a coach, but get someone who is helping you to remain accountable to your actions and your belief patterns and your meeting systems, and someone who you can, just like at times unload on within reason. But it's not just something that we should be using as a reactive, like, oh, I'm not doing well, I need to go get help. Like, I have a therapist that I've had for years, and sometimes I change therapists, but I always make sure, even if I feel good and I feel like everything is great, I still schedule sessions with that person, because there's always something to talk about or something to dig into, or, reflection on the week that I don't often slow down to do, but that person stops me and slows me down and has me do that. So I think that's a beautiful practice, and one I would encourage everyone to adopt. Most insurances will cover some level of it, if not all of it. But don't wait until you're struggling and to get support. Make sure that you use these tools preventatively as well. So I love that. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. And so the one response I get often is like, but I didn't have trauma, or because I do have our program directors go through their own ACEs survey and their own resilience. I just want to know, like, where are you, like, and to connect them to the work. But some people say, like, I don't have any trauma, so I don't need that. But I like to ask, is there anything you do, anything on a daily basis that you feel like is not aligned with who you want to be? Like, you react to a situation as a parent where you're like, I wish I was more patient there, or I wish I didn't scream at that person in traffic, or anything you did that you're like, that's really not aligned with who I want to be. Well, chances are you probably took on that behavior at a time that it served you and you needed to. So I bet you everybody does something that they feel like isn't aligned with who they want to be. So that's where you start. I think that's where you start.
Breaking patterns. That's going to change kids. We spend so much time working with kids, and it's beautiful because we're trying to shape and change them in the future. But I really think that what's going to work at eradicating a lot of these problems is changing the adults, is changing belief patterns, meaning systems, all of that stuff from the top, so that everybody that's, interacted with that adult moving forward, kids that are being raised, all these patterns and beliefs are shifting and changing. So I do think that's where we need to start, while simultaneously working with kids. But yes, I agree 100%. So, I mean, my next question for you is, do you have a reference or recommendation for our listeners? I mean, certainly your website, your books are great resources. Anything else that you think is worth mentioning for people to check out?
Well, so we have the Stable Moments podcast, which is a place that's supposed to just connect community at large to the issue, to foster adopted families. I felt like there was a big disconnect. There's either people that are into foster adoption and there's people that aren't. And that's where the mentorship kind of comes into it. But our podcast brings on experts like you and foster parents and foster kids and different perspectives. We've had police officers, judges, different people to show like what their experience is with the system, the experience of these children and these families, so that we can just show up as a more informed community.
That's a great resource too. And that's helpful too, because y'all can listen to that while you're driving or while you're walking or while you're exercising. It's such an awesome thing to have access to. Anything else that you would like to share, chat about, talk about before we wrap?
So I will give a little practical exercise that that people can do. And this one actually does take a horse. So, you might end up being the weird person that next time you see a horse, you're like approaching it all weird. And people are like, what are you doing to my horse? But if you have an opportunity, like, I don't know, a neighbor or there's horses somewhere where they come up to the fence or whatever, just try this little exercise. So we call it respect my bubble is the activity. But if a horse is looking at you with 2 eyes and 2 ears, so their ears are pointed toward you and their eyes are looking at you, that is their invitation to say, come, I'm interested in you. I would like you to approach. And as you approach, just approach like a normal person. Don't approach like a creepy crawler, just approach. But because people start doing these activities and they start getting like the lion that's like about to eat the horse, right? It's like, what are you doing? Just walk. Okay. So, so you start approaching the horse, but you'll notice you will get to some point where the horse will drop an eye. So they will put one eye away to turn away from you, or they'll drop an ear to not listen to you. So they go from forward facing to dropping to the side. And that is their boundary of saying, now you've come I'm getting a little nervous about your approach. If you stop right there, notice that they did that change and you take one step back, so you retreat. You'll notice they bring all of their energy back. They'll give you 2 eyes and 2 ears again, because they're going like, wow, you respected my boundary. And now I feel like I can have this partnership where I would like you to approach. You'll notice you can probably take 2 more steps the next time. And if you approach and retreat every time, they drop away from you, then they'll let you come all the way up. And it's just a really beautiful way to respect a horse's boundaries, but also to teach yourself like attunement of where your bubble is. And what we do with kids and mentors without a horse even present, so this is something you could do without a horse with a kid, start approaching a kid and ask a kid, when do you feel like it's too close? Like, where's your bubble? And you can have a kid do this with you. And we all know kids that are like all up in your grill and like hanging off you and wanting to be in your personal space. So it's a great exercise to say, like, I'm going to start walking towards you and you tell me where your bubble is. And you can start walking towards me and I can tell you where my bubble is. And you'll feel when somebody's approaching you, we've all been next to the guy at Starbucks that you're like, hello, guy, like, personal space. So getting aware of where your bubble is and talking that through with kids. But I don't know, if you have an opportunity to do it with a horse, it's a pretty cool exercise.
Yeah. And is this you called it what again?
Respect my bubble.
Respect my bubble. Okay. Is this the same as or different than give or take? Is give or take?
It's different than.
Okay. So we'll say that.
Okay.
I'm forecasting what's coming. All right. Before we get to our try to home tip, I will put all of your information in the show notes below for everyone to access, but verbally, where can people find you and follow you?
Yes. So find me at stablemoments.com. All of the socials are at Stable Moments. Follow me. I'm Rebecca Britt on LinkedIn. If you want to look me up and connect with me there, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Stable Moments podcast, all of that is on the website. So
website's a great resource. Okay, we'll make sure that's linked in the show notes. Awesome. Okay, so then we're gonna wrap with try to home tip, which if you are not new here, you know that we do this in every episode. So it's just some type of practical or fun activity, something to work on growth in some small way. So asked Rebecca what she suggested we do for this, and she gave the concept of this give and take activity. So I'm gonna let her explain that, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so I know I gave you the bubble exercise. So this is another one that is with attunement. It's called give and take. So attunement to energy, attunement to body language. So if you take a rope, like you could find a dog leash or something, we use the horse ropes at the barn, but you could find any type of rope or string. And one person is going to act like the horse, and one person is going to act like the person leading the person. And you both hold an end of the rope. So somebody has one end of the rope, the other person has the other end of the rope. And the person that is playing the horse is going to add tension to the rope. So pull the rope a little bit. And the person on the other end is just going to hold it tight, just going to hold that tension and wait and wait and wait and wait. And as soon as the horse releases tension, so you're going to give a little, that the person on the other end needs to release immediately. And you just do it over and over again until, and now everybody, I set this up in some workshops, and everybody that's the horse like starts like running around and bucking. Like you don't need to really pretend you're a horse, even though that's kind of fun. If you want to do that, you can do that with the kids. But this is really more about the soft, subtle language that we use, because horses are usually speaking at like a whisper. They're so vigilant that we don't need to be like, whoa, back up, whoa, like all that stuff we do. They actually are speaking at a very soft language. So this is kind of how we attune ourselves to that. But it's really interesting to be able to see, like, and to allow a child or another person to feel like, I hear you, through this this soft feel, or this give and take. I'm listening, and I'm releasing the second releasing. And it's kind of just a way to become really attuned with another person. I hope I explained that in a way that like visually people can conceptualize it.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it was because I told you, I'm like, you're gonna have to explain this because I don't want to butcher it. So having not known what it was, I now can clearly see what it was. And I see the benefit of that because a lot of what's coming up in my coaching calls with families and schools right now is impulsivity of kids and just kind of reactivity. And we talk a lot about like what are games and activities that you all can play that require kids to slow down, because I know like mindfulness and meditation, I know those things will work. They're harder buy-in for kids. They're slow moving. So what are some more active ways to practice that? And this is a great way because you have to be aware of and slow down enough to recognize that give and take, or that, that I guess the take that you then have to give back to, or the response to it. So it works on strengthening your thinking brain. Therefore, kids will stay in their thinking brain longer. They're less emotionally reactive. They're more attuned to people's responses, emotions, energy, all those things. So this is great. And you don't really need much to do that. A rope? It's pretty much
just
it.
Rope.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for today's episode of Returning to Us podcast. Remember our try it at home tip. Technically, you have two today. You could do or give and take, or the bubble activity with the horse. If you don't have access to a horse, you can try and do it without, but definitely try and get access to a horse, because that sounds like something that could be hugely beneficial and awesome to experience. And if you'd like me to answer any future questions on the podcast, we usually do a question, but today I asked so many questions, I didn't do it listener question, but either email me at the podcast at thebehaviorhub.com or send a text to 717-693-7744 and apply what you learned today in the episode right away. And you can do that. You can pop in comment, you can pop in, leave a review with your biggest takeaway and what you're going to do to implement. Until next episode, I am Lauren Spiegelmeier, and thanks, Rebecca, for sharing your genius with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.